My name, as has been said by Fallon, is Aoife McPartland, and I'm grateful for the opportunity this morning to talk about something that I've been studying for over 3 years now, and conscious that lunch is after me, I'll try to keep to time pretty strictly. So the title of my paper today is Director Restriction Regime, the Evolution Thus Far. Before I begin talking about the timeline, I'll explain a little bit more about what restriction is. So I'm sure many members of the audience are well aware of it themselves. So in terms of the regime itself, to start at the start, before the 1990 Act was enacted, Ireland was looking, when it joined the predecessor to the European Union, it conducted a review of the company law provisions and implementing EU directives on company law between roughly 1977 and 1990. The vision of the restriction regime as an expansion of the disqualification of company directors regime is not ultimately what transpired. Instead, it didn't fall under the disqualification regime, but operated independently. The disqualification regime itself began in Ireland under the Companies Act 1963, and it's received a number of amendments since then, including tackling directors who have been found guilty of fraudulent offences, those in default of their filing obligations with the CRO, and those unfit to be concerned in the management of a company. The overlap includes sanction for persistent default in filing requirements under the Companies Act and breaches of directors' duties. You see them in both regimes in terms of the behaviours they tackle. Viewing the regimes as separate and disqualification as more serious implies that they should tackle different types of behaviour. But given that the restriction regime originated as an expansion of the disqualification regime, that overlap might make sense. Since then, arising from a recommendation of the Company Law Review Group, it's now an additional requirement for a director defending themselves from a restriction order to establish that they cooperated with the liquidator when requested to do so, and that enhances liquidators' ability to perform an oversight function for the regime. In terms of the present day, it's worth noting that in addition to the above change to the restriction regime, in their 2007 annual report, the Company Law Review Group recommended the introduction of restriction and disqualification undertakings. These undertakings were introduced under the 2014 Act, and restriction undertakings arise where a director consents to being restricted from acting as a company director when invited to do so by the CEA. Both the disqualification regime in Ireland and the UK continue to expand to include different types of director conduct under the regime. That conduct does overlap with conduct that's also caught by the restriction regime in Ireland, and distinguishing the types of behaviours under those regimes is uneasy because they weren't originally designed to, it's uneasy because they were originally designed to operate together. Restriction is a feature in the landscape of company law enforcement in Ireland and has been applied to over 2,600 people since 2003, with the creation and work programme of the ODC and now CEA. In determining its uses for the future, an understanding of its past can be informative. Thank you very much.